In this episode of Viral Rewind, we're going to look at the Crash.DOS virus, and we're looking at two variants, variants 543 and 600. And both of these viruses, at least one for sure, does exactly what the name says on the box. It actually does crash. But anyway, we're going to start with Crash.543. Now, both of these viruses, what they do is that when you first run them, they infect the first uninfected file that you have set in a directory that's defined by the path command in your autoexec. So generally what that means is when you put path in your autoexec, regardless of what directory you're in, if you type something like command or format or sys or xcopy, you don't have to go to the directory where those are located. The path has already set that so you can access them from any directory in DOS there. It knows where those are stored, so when you enter those commands, it can go right to those folders where they are. You don't have to try to manually change directories to get there to use those. And generally, the first file in, especially with DOS, that it will infect, of course, is command.com. That's generally the uppermost file in the path of the DOS directory, and that tends to be what gets infected by both these crash variants. So with Crash.543, we're not really going to try to look at the infection part of them, because the infection's a little buggy, and the infected program tends to hang the system and not function properly. So we're not going to look so much at infection, but the payloads that both these variants of Crash do. So again, we're going to look at Crash.543 first. So let me verify the date first. So let me just change the date real quick. So we bring up Crash.543. It actually helps if I do it correctly. So we run it, and it runs and then goes right back to the DOS prompt. But as I said, it will have infected whatever the first uninfected file set in the path command would be, which generally tends to be command.com a lot of the times. So nothing happens, but if an infected file, which again, as I say, it tends to break them, so you may not even see it because it tends to hang the system when you try to run the infected program. If the date happens to be Friday the 13th, and of course that's Friday the 13th of any month, where again, it's both Friday and the day is 13, if you run something that's infected with Crash.543, I'm doing it again here, you get a little printout. Well, I had to plug the camcorder in because the battery went dead on me right when I was trying to show the payload of Crash.543. So let me go back to make sure the date is changed for, again, what is supposed to be Friday the 13th. And if any infected program with Crash.543 is run, you get this little printout on it that says, that could be a crash, crash, crash. And that's all it does. So whenever an infected program with Crash.543 is run, if it doesn't hang up the system, because again, the infection is kind of buggy and doesn't work well with these crash viruses, you'll get that printout on it. Now, we're going to flip around and look at Crash.600. And again, for that one, I can't really show you the infection or anything. It's got just as much of a problem as 543 does. So we're just going to jump to the payload directly on that. So what I need to do first here is get that payload initiated, because Crash.600's payload is a little buggy on this IBM PS1. Sometimes it works pretty well on some systems, sometimes it doesn't. So I have to kind of play around with it here to get us to see that. So I'm going to open a good command interpreter there, and then I'm going to open command, which is infected, here, and there we are. This is Crash.600's payload, and it doesn't matter what the date is, this one will activate on any day. But if you have an infected program with Crash.600 that you try to run, it's not going to run it, obviously. You get this graphical payload here that has a whole bunch of scrolling graphics and characters and everything on the screen. got no keyboard input. The only thing you can do is use Control-Alt-Delete and restart the computer. So, again, pretty much a real quick video on two variants of the Crash.DOS virus, variants 543 and the one that you're seeing here, Crash.600.